Hi, I'm Nancy Chanteau, and I'm going to read to you today from the book Access to Power, A Radical Approach for Changing Your Life. I'm going to read to you from the Theory of Change chapter written by Julia Kelleher, and this is a section where she talks about all of the steps that we take in Skills for Change coaching to help people make changes. And I wanted to focus on this today because I wanted to talk a little bit about Skills for Change coaching and what you might experience in going through the coaching process, the kinds of things we do in Skills for Change, and how it's different from normal coaching and normal therapy. So this is in the middle of a section called Changing Our Life Circumstances, and I'm reading the last paragraph and then into a description of a bunch of steps that are involved in the change process. So we're talking about a woman named Annie who's been in the middle of trying to change, and she's needing to leave her marriage in order to make the changes that she wants to make. So this is a continuation of the story about Annie. Julia says, Annie relied on her adult observer to courageously face the central contradiction in her life of the moment. She loved her husband, but he was not willing or capable to change with her. Annie needed to practice lots of awareness, compassion, and discernment before she ever came to my office to get help. Once she knew that her husband wasn't able to participate in the process of change with her, she engaged in it independently of him. She was ready to move forward in the hard process of making changes in her life. Following are the 8 steps in the process of change we use in Skills for Change coaching. Explore options. We see how we are stuck, what behaviors and beliefs are keeping us stuck, and then we explore new possibilities. We ask friends and teachers what we might do differently. We consider and plan some changes that seem doable. We try something and compassionately assess what works and what doesn't. Commit to practice. We practice refraining from the old behaviors and beliefs. We practice something new. We'll have good days and bad days, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 5 steps forward. Learning is not a quick or linear process, so we need to cultivate endurance for the long haul. We strengthen our compassion and awareness and take on practices that support the change we seek, such as walking, getting a massage, or writing in a journal. Make mistakes. We see ourselves do the same old thing. We congratulate ourselves for our awareness and we try again. Invite community support. We include other people around us who support the importance and understand the difficulty of the change we are trying to make. We need to keep taking in loving feedback and encouragement so we don't go back to the shroud of unawareness that nurtures the old, more familiar, and therefore comfortable pattern. Fight the pig. Our internalized cop-in-the-head beliefs will come up in the midst of our progress, and especially when we have setbacks. It helps to remember we learned the right-wrong beliefs from our culture and we can unlearn them. A successful pig fight takes repetition and community support. Take breaks and replenish. When we are depleted and tired, we take a rest and replenish break from the effort to change. When we are in a state of depletion, it helps us to notice what pig comes up to reinforce hopelessness and cause us to want to give up. When we are more rested and have fought the pig, we will likely feel re-inspired to begin again. Track our progress. We create some sort of tracking system so that we can see when change has been made and reinforce our ability to know how we succeeded in behaving in a new way. Otherwise, our internalized pig messages may tell us we are not making progress and to give up. Accept and appreciate ourselves. We appreciate our efforts and accept the way we are struggling. We practice loving ourselves and the rest of this beautiful, mysterious world just the way it is. We compassionately hold the contradictions implicit in our human lives. We want to change. In fact, we strive to change. But even if we don't change, we're still okay. We find choice, safety, and love wherever it is in the present moment. Then we begin our effort to change again. So I want to just talk a little bit more about actually why we get coaching and what coaching does to help support this process. Um, Essentially, in Skills for Change coaching, a lot of these steps become part of the normal activity of checking in and tracking and making plans. Um, a big differentiator in Skills for Change is that we're constantly normalizing and referring back to our cultural experiences, both in our family of origin and also in our culture of origin. If our culture of origin and our current culture is different, we might refer back to both so that we can see how the tension between the two and the pressures upon us are different, are unique to our own experience of two cultures rather than just of one. And we also assess our desires and our success based on our internalized oppression. We check in about what it is that we have beliefs about ourselves and our circumstances, what we need to be able to do, what success is. All of those things are based on belief systems, and those belief systems can be tinged with cultural values that aren't ours. So that whole process of fighting the pig, figuring out what our internalized oppressive beliefs are, what our values are, and how we stay plugged into our own values and make sure that we're protecting ourselves from cultural values that are either opposite to our values or counterproductive to our values. And it's fine to stay connected with cultural values that are supporting what we want to accomplish, as long as we are seeing all of that within a nuanced and non-dual frame of mind where it's not right or wrong, but it's right for us, right in this context, wrong for us, wrong in this context, much more than it is about like there being a rigid and fixed right and wrong way to do things. So that big emphasis on power is different. We're looking at the way that culture and power affect us transactionally in our everyday lives, and how that's going to affect our plans and our goals and our actions. And the other big thing that's different in Skills for Change coaching is that we're going to constantly be referring back to the body. What are we capable of doing? What are we capable of practicing right now? What do we need to build skill, build muscle to be able to do? And what do we need to take away or unpack out of our bodies in order to make space for change? So that if an old habit or an old pattern or an old belief system or old emotions are coming up, when we're trying to make a change, we might need to address that in order to make the shift we want to make without all of that extra baggage weighing us down. And sometimes that extra baggage is trauma. Sometimes there's something that was so difficult and so scary and so hard that it gets stored in the trauma memory system rather than being stored in our cognitive memory system. So it's something that runs like a movie every time we think of it, and it feels like it's happening right now rather than being something that fades as time passes. And when something's a trauma memory, we're going to need to desensitize that trauma before we go forward. So we will figure out a body-based way to do that because trauma memory is based on intensity. So a desensitization process will need to also be based on physical intensity. I'm not saying like, you need to get beaten up in order to replace your trauma memory. And in fact, something as simple as brushing your hair or tapping your face or your arms will be enough to start to desensitize a memory. It just needs to be not just a talking experience, or a thinking experience. It needs to be something physical that will desensitize that trauma memory. So those are our two major differentiators that we are thinking and talking about power, both how it affects us transactionally out in the world and also how it affects us internally as internalized oppression, and making sure we understand our relationship between our values and the external values. And then we're going to be referring back to the body as the site of change, the place where we make changes as a practice, practical in our bodies rather than thinking about it, that the actions that we need to take, making those different, that's where change happens. Okay, I hope that answers a few more of your questions about coaching itself. Thanks. I hope this helps.